boys and girls. So just like I said yesterday, we are continuing on our lesson. Yesterday, we really focused on the numerical patterns. We still need to use those skills today, but we're going to take it a step further and we're going to graph our data that we are solving. So remember, first find the answers to the numerical pattern in the first row, then find the answer to the numerical pattern in the second row. Then we are going to graph it on our coordinate grid right here. So we have our days up top, right? Then we have our numbers of pencils and the amount spent. From 1 to 2, we're increasing. So we're either adding 1 or multiplying by 2. Okay, so our rules for the top are either +1 or times 2. So let's look at 2 to 3. 2 times 2 is 4. So that's not our rule. That means that our rule for the first row is +1. You can see we don't have any of those boxes to fill in, but I still wanted us to find that pattern just so that we could get used to finding patterns again today. Now on our next row, we go from 2 to 1. In the past, all of our numbers have been getting bigger. So we've either added or multiplied. But now 1 is smaller than 2, which means our numbers are getting smaller. That means our rule is either going to be to subtract or to divide. Well, 2 divided by what equals 1? 2 divided by 2 equals 1. So our rule is either to divide by 2 or to subtract 1, because 2 minus 1 equals 1. I'm going to start checking with the subtraction rule. 3 minus 1, it does equal 2, right? But 3 divided by 2 does not equal 2. So our rule is to subtract 1. So we start with 4 and we subtract 1 and get 3. Then we have 5 minus 1 is 4, and 6 minus 1 is 5. So now that we have filled in our table, we need to graph our points. We are going to do that by putting our number of pencils on the x-axis. So I'm going to label my axis number of pencils, which leaves my y-axis to be the amount spent. So I've got my number of pencils on my x-axis. That means on my y-axis, I'm just going to put it right here because I can't really write sideways on a computer. I'm going to put spent just so we know what will go along the y-axis. Usually I write it sideways right along here, but just the way that our paper is set up, I'm just going to write it right there. And then our title of our graph that I could put right here could be pencils, because you always want a title of your graph. And then if we're looking for ordered pairs, if you look in our chart, we know that our x coordinate comes first, which means that our number of pencils are going to be our x coordinate, and then our amount spent is our y coordinate. So our first ordered pair would be 2, 1, which means we start at the origin, we move to the right along the x-axis 2 spaces, and then we move up along the y-axis 1 space, and we plot our point at 2, 1. Then we have 3, 2, so we move over 3, and then we jump up 2. Then we have 4, 3, so we move over to 4 and jump up to 3. Then we have 5, 4, so we go over to 4, jump up over to 5, jump up to 4. Then we have 6, 5, so we move over to 6 and jump all the way up to 5. And these are line graphs, so I'm actually going to connect those points, and we can see that it is a steady increase. The more pencils you buy, the more money you spent. And we can actually see that 2 pencils is $1, and the more pencils you buy, the more money they spend, right? Alrighty, so we're going to look at this second chart right here. It is marbles. I'm not going to label my graph here. We're just going to do the points and then plot them, but we'll talk about what we would label it, okay? So since the title is marbles, I would label my chart or have the title of my graph to be marbles. Then I have bags, the number of erasers, and weight. I would graph the number of erasers and the weight. The number of erasers is going to be my x-axis, and my weight is going to be my y-axis. But we're missing some points, so we first have to figure those out. One bag has how many erasers? We're not sure. So we need to look at the 2, 3, and 4 to be able to figure out the 1 and the 8. So we go from 2 to 2. Then we go from 3 to 3. We're not changing any, right? So the number of bags is the same as the number of erasers. So one bag is one eraser, and 8 bags would be 8 erasers. Our rule there is we didn't really change, right? You could have divided by 1 or multiplied by 1 if you need a rule, but the number's not changing. But from our number of erasers to the weight, it is changing. So from 1 to 3, our number's getting bigger. That means our rule could be to multiply by 3, because 1 times 3 is 3, or it could be to add 2 because 1 plus 2 is 3. So let's check it. 4 times 3 is 12, so that could be our rule. 4 plus 2 is only 6, so our rule has to be times 3. So then we go back to fill in our spots. 2 times 3 is 6, and then 3 times 3 is 9. So now that we have our data, we can fix our graph by graphing those ordered pairs. So my number of erasers are my x coordinates, and my weight is my y coordinate. So we have 1, 3. That means from the origin, you go over 1, up 3. This graph is labeled by 2, but they skipped a line in between each one. So this line represents 1. This line represents 3. They just didn't label each line. So it's still pretty easy to be able to graph these numbers. Then we have 2, 6. So from the origin, I move right along the x-axis 2 spaces. Sorry, look, Miss Solly even got it backwards. You've got to make sure the x comes first. From the origin, move to the right along the x-axis 2 spaces. Then I move up along the y-axis 6 spaces. Then we have 3, 9. So I go over to 3 all the way up to 9. Then we have 4, 12. So I go over to 4 all the way up to 12. Then we have 8, 24. Go over to 8 all the way up to 24. My graph actually only goes to 20. So 24 would actually be up here, right? It'd be above the graph. So if I was connecting these points, I could see, whoa, it goes up the greater number of erasers, the greater the weight, right? The more erasers we have, the greater the weight, because our graph shows that we are increasing. All right, guys, that is all for our lesson today. Let me know if you have any questions. You have a short assignment right below this video, and then I will see you Monday. We're going to play Battleship.